Monday, everyone, and welcome to Testa and Neal. Keep it real right here on WWSU 106.9 FM or our YouTube channel. However, you're hanging out with us, we do appreciate it. My name's Shea Neal, alongside with me, Parker Testa. Parker, only 2 more weeks of the show left before the school year starts, and it's kind of it's sad that it's coming to an end, but at the same time, it's been an absolute blast this summer, and we don't plan on slowing down to end the summer. We still got 2 more weeks of jam-packed content. I'm excited.
I am too. This show's been a blast, and we're having more and more fun every single day. It seems like, and only 2 weeks left, but we're gonna make the most of it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm stoked, and we have a big show for you today as well. I mean, we had a really good week last week. I feel like it was one of our better weeks of the semester, or the summer, I should say, content wise. And I think we're getting off to a really good start this week as well, where we're going to start the show today talking college football. We tend to do college football on Mondays, but we're going to get back into it today. And a position group that we haven't talked about yet that I feel like we've waited too long to talk about is wide receivers. So we're going to be going over some of the top teams in the nation with the best wide receiver cores. We already know some of them, Parker, but I'm sure there's plenty that you haven't thought about, or maybe some teams you've never even heard of. So there's talent all over Division I, and I'm excited to see the best receivers, whether they're from the SEC or the Sun Belt.
Yeah. You have so many talented receiver rooms, just so many talented receivers, and there's plenty to go around. So this is going to be a fun one.
No doubt. A little bit later on in hour number one, trade deadline has come and gone. If you're living under a rock, Chris Bryant's a Giant, Anthony Rizzo's a Yankee, Javi Baez is a Met, Jose Barrios is a Blue Jay, Max Scherzer and Trey Turner are Dodgers. So there's been quite a bit of shakeup in the baseball landscape, and I think it's only fitting, Parker, that we look at the standings, we look at the rosters of some of these contending teams, and we analyze what the trade deadline did to the playoff race. Which teams got better? Which teams got worse, and have some of our opinions changed. Like, personally, I'll just come out and say one just for an example. I still think the Giants are a really, really good team, and I think they will be in the playoffs. But I think this trade for Scherzer and Turner makes the Dodgers the favorites to win the division in my eyes.
Yeah, you have to think so. Even though the Giants have been fantastic, and they get Bryant, who homered here earlier today, you add Scherzer, you add Turner. They also got Danny Duffy from the Royals. So the Dodgers came away with a massive haul. Of course, they gave up a lot to get those guys, but they are a talented team before. And adding arguably the best pitcher in baseball with arguably the best shortstop in baseball makes your team better. And they're getting Kershaw, as well as they got Seager back this afternoon, and Scherzer's going to have his debut on Wednesday night. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this topic. And you have to think this makes the Dodgers the favorite here in this division.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you weren't exactly thrilled about some of those prospects that the Dodgers gave up in this deal, but for those of you that are Dodgers fans or, Nationals fans or just baseball fans in general, something I'm really excited for later tonight, Josiah Gray, one of the big pieces in that Scherzer trade, is making his Nationals debut tonight. They're calling him up to the majors, and he's going to make his Nationals debut tonight. And I'm gonna be watching that for sure, because the Reds are off tonight, so I get a night off from suffering from watching the Reds. So I'll be watching Josiah Gray make his debut in DC. He's quite the pitcher. I like him a lot, not just because the Reds drafted him. I think he has top of the rotation kind of stuff.
He does, and we talked about it last week. That was one of the ones that hurt the most. I think if you're a Dodgers fan and you give up Josiah Gray, who's going to be fantastic. So I'm excited to watch his debut here tonight. He's going to do great stuff in Washington, and you got to have somebody to replace Scherzer. So maybe Josiah Gray has the stuff to be that one or two guy.
So hour number one sounds like a blast, doesn't it? College football wide receivers, MLB trade deadline, how everything's shaken up after that. That sounds like one heck of a show in its own right. But then we get to hour number two. Nick Chubb got a heck of a contract, Parker. He's now the second highest paid running back in football, I think, maybe third. I have to double check that. But he got a heck of a payday to stay in Cleveland. And in honor of Nick Chubb's big payday, getting the Brinks truck backed into his driveway, we're going to be doing a tier list of every single starting running back in the NFL, and I am absolutely stoked.
Yeah, yeah. These NFL, topics have been a lot of fun. We've done quarterbacks, we've done head coaches, so this one's going to be fun. Lots of talented running backs in this league, and I'm excited to dive into all these guys and see where we put them.
Me too. So let's get started. We don't have a lot of time to mess around today, so let's get right into it. I'm gonna bring up, if you're watching us on YouTube, you know the drill. I'm going to pull up our college football preview magazine. I don't know why I couldn't think there for a second, but I will open that here, and we will get to the wide receiver page. So if you're following along at home, that's what we're talking about today. But I'm excited for it, and I know Parker's not. Parker, I don't know if I know this off the top of my head. Well, who's your college football team? Do you have a specific team?
I don't really. I tend to root for IU football because I grew up in Indiana, and I'm a big Dabo Sweeney fan, so I always kind of follow along with Clemson. But I really don't have a set in stone team that I follow very much.
Well, for those of you that know me, I'm an Ohio State fan. I grew up in Ohio, and I didn't even need to pull up this list to know that Ohio State has a dominant receiving core. And sure enough, they come up at number one on this list. And I don't think that's any bias, Parker. I'll tell you what. I think Ohio State has the best duo of wide receivers in the country. Chris Olave surprisingly decided to come back for his senior season. This dude's an absolute stud, averages 15 yards a catch. One of the best route runners in college football, brings a lot of leadership to the table in Columbus. Garrett Wilson's a future first-round draft pick. He was the number 3 receiver in the country in his class, averaged 17 yards per catch last season. They were the best duo in the country last year, and I expect them to be the same again this year. It's crazy because Wilson might be their most dominant receiver, but Olave might be their best all-around and consistent receiver. And then they also bring in Julian Fleming, the number 1 receiver in the country for this year, Jackson Smith-Njigba, who had a huge year last year, and Jeremy Ruckert, who's also one of the best tight ends in the country. Wright State probably. I mean, Wright State, we hope their receiving core is pretty good, but Ohio State, saying this as an Ohio State fan, but just as a football fan in general, if this isn't the best receiving room in the country, it's right at the top.
Yeah, it's close. And for those of you who know me, I am not an Ohio State fan. Quite the opposite, actually, which I know is not liked by the Dayton area, and I'm okay with that. But certainly this Ohio State receiving core is the best in the country. Olave, he's literally on the cover of this magazine that we are looking at right now.
Yep.
So he's fantastic as always. And then Garrett Wilson was the number 3 prospect in his class, had 700 yards last year as well. So those 2 guys were very good. And then so they'll have Fleming coming in. As well as Egbuka and Smith Nigba is going to be fantastic as well. And then Ruckert quite possibly is the best tight end in the country. And as this said, he's going to be a contender for the John Mackey Award.
He is. And the one guy that we didn't even talk about on this list, I don't know how much playing time he's going to get as a true freshman, Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison Jr., the son of one of the greatest Colts receivers of all time. So there you go. You can tie that to your favorite football team, Parker. Marvin Harrison's kid is, a future stud at Ohio State as well.
Yeah. And the son of a Hall of Famer, like you said. So he's going to come in, the 10th ranked receiver in his, at the position group coming in this season, like you said, true freshman. So, they add him to an already loaded receiver room.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, you can love Ohio State. You can hate Ohio State. You can have any opinion of Ohio State that you want. But it was such a tall task for Ryan Day to try and replace Urban Meyer. And there's a lot of stuff that Ryan Day can improve upon, and I'm sure he'll be the first to tell you that. But he's done a heck of a job so far as Ohio State's head coach. But one thing that I'm just absolutely blown away with how good he does it, at maybe the same level as Urban Meyer, maybe even a little bit better, is he's just off the charts in terms of being able to recruit talent. This is every year since Ryan Day became the head coach, Ohio State's either had the number 1 or number 2 recruiting class in the country. So I don't know what he says to them in their at-home visits. I don't know what he says to them on their campus visits, but something with the Ryan Day philosophy is working, and he knows how to recruit talent with the best of them. He's, Saban and Sweeney tier when it comes to recruiting.
He is, and guys wanted to come to Ohio State to play for Urban Meyer, and there are some guys on this team, the older guys that did play for Urban Meyer. So they're going to have, they have talent there, and how about a heck of a task, like you said, to come in and replace somebody, Urban Meyer, and Ryan Day has done it almost as seamlessly as you can. He comes in and gives Ohio State, just what they needed: a younger guy, somebody who's a rock star as a recruiter, and Ryan Day has been that. And this is very evident here. We see Ohio State near the top of almost all these position rankings.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's get to number 2, the Oklahoma Sooners and Lincoln Riley, another top tier coach in terms of recruiting. Ohio State is number 1 in the country because of their just star power and talent. Oklahoma is just as good, but in a different way. It comes with depth. They have 6 of their top 7 receivers returning this year: Marvin Mims, Theo Weiss, the number 2 tight end in the country, Austin Stogner, as well as true freshman Mario Williams and Arkansas transfer Mike Woods. None of these receivers, Parker, are as good as Olave and Wilson, but you put all these guys together, and Oklahoma is just about as good as Ohio State.
Yeah, it's possible. These guys are very good. Mims is fantastic, had 600 yards last year, as well as Weiss and Stogner are fantastic. And then you add in Mario Williams and the transfer Woods. So this receiving room, they have size and they're great players. So, Ohio State has some competition here.
I'm stoked for the Clemson. I mean, I don't like Clemson, so it feels weird to say that I'm stoked to watch Clemson this year, but we talked about, we did the ACC last week, and we talked about, the tall task of DJ Ukulele and replacing Trevor Lawrence. But what I'm excited about is they have a lot of their receivers coming back. A team that's been notorious for having great wide receivers: Mike Williams, T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow, and now they've got another one, and he's coming back after a nasty injury. And I'm stoked because he's one of the best receivers in the country when he's healthy. Justin Ross. This dude's a rock star. And if he can stay on the field this year, Clemson's got a top tier weapon.
Yeah, they do. And they look like they're going to be fun. They get Justin Ross back, who was a stud in the college football playoff a few years back. So he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then they have lots of new players on this roster. So they're going to have, lots of new faces in this Clemson receiving room. You lose a couple of your guys like Higgins, like Mike Williams, like you said, but where there's a will, there's a way. Dabo is going to find a way to be good with his receivers.
He is. Clemson football is a lot like, Duke basketball, where it's a bunch of freshmen and sophomores every year, and you wonder how the heck are they always this good with so much inexperience? Well, it's because they're all 5-star recruits that were the best in their state. But I have no doubt with a bunch of talented underclassmen led by Justin Ross, the Clemson offense is going to be nasty this year, no doubt about it. Let's get to Oregon. Let's go out to the West Coast, Parker. Oregon brings back their top 3 receivers, including Micah Pittman and Devin Williams, 2 big guys that can go up and get the ball. They lost their starting tight end, but they have an unbelievable recruiting class coming in. The number 4 receiver in the country, the number 5 receiver in the country, as well as the number 5 tight end and the number 9 tight end. So they have the star power in Pittman and Williams, and they're bringing in a lot of young talent that's going to be able to make an impact right away. The future of Oregon and Mario Cristobal is very, very bright, and it looks like they're going to be running the Pac-12 in the near future.
Yeah, they are. And, Mario Cristobal has done a fantastic job, at Oregon and Eugene. Micah Pittman, the brother of Colts receiver Michael Pittman, he's fantastic as well. 13th ranked receiver in his class. And then you have, of course, Devin Williams, who is good. He's great. And then, they lose their tight end, but bring in an insanely good freshman class, like this says, with the four and five, 4-5 at wide receivers and the 5-9 at tight ends. So they're going to be, just as good as they always are.
Texas A&M comes in at number 5. The Aggies were young at wide receiver a season ago, but they returned all 6 of their top receivers last year, and maybe the top tight end in the country in Jalen Weidermeyer. Anaya Smith moves back from running back to wide receiver, and now this experienced unit has plenty of NFL caliber talent. And this is just an example of Parker. I mean, this Texas A&M team was number 5 in the country last year, just barely missed the playoffs. One of their few, I don't even want to call it a weakness, just not their best, not their biggest strength, was their inconsistencies at wide receiver. But it wasn't because the talent wasn't there. It was because they were all freshmen and sophomores. Now they're all sophomores and juniors, and they look like future NFL starters. And this A&M team, just as good as they were last year, if not better. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive with teams like Alabama, Georgia, and Florida than a lot of people give them credit for.
Yeah, they're going to be great. Jimbo Fisher's done a heck of a job here. They pump out wide receivers like just as good as an Ohio State or an LSU. Whatever you want to have that be. That wide receiver. Texas A&M is certainly in that conversation. They have they have a really good tight end in Weidermeyer, and then Anita Smith moves from a running back to receiver, and so they have a lot of NFL caliber talent, like this says. They're good. They're quick. They run routes very well. So I'm excited to see what the Aggies do.
Me too. Let's go back out to the West Coast at number 6. Caden Slovis's squad out at USC. The Trojans lost. This is a little different from the other ones we've talked about, where a lot of these top teams are just getting their top guys back, and that's why they are at the top. USC lost 2 of their top 3 wide receivers from a loaded, receiving core last year, but they have Drake London coming back, who had 500 yards in just 6 games. Brew McCoy was the number 1 receiver in the country in his class. He's going to get a big chance to make an impact this year. And then they add in Memphis freshman Taj Washington, who had 740 yards a season ago. Tight end Malcolm Epps, who started at Texas in 2019, had to sit out last year due to the transfer rule. But they add in a lot of transfer talent, but Drake London is a top-tier receiver in the Pac-12, and I'm really excited to see Brew McCoy. This was a guy that was considered, like this says, the best high school wide receiver in the country when he graduated, and he's going to get a big chance to help Caden Slovis in this USC offense emerge as one of the elite offenses in college football.
And he's itching to go. He's about right, like this says. Number 1 position rater, number 1 receiver in his class for a reason. McCoy certainly has the talent and and the drive to be really good. And then of course they have they have Drake London, who was great last year, and then they add in Epps and Washington, who both guys come in as transfers. But Epps had he started 7 games in 2019 for Charlie Strong and Austin, and then they added Memphis freshman, Taj Washington, who had 750 yards last year. So this Trojan receiving room is going to be strong. They're going to be, they're going to play hard.
They are. And just a few more notes on Brew McCoy for those of you that don't know. I mean, this kid was built in the lab. 6'3", 215 pounds. He's fast. He runs about a 4.35 40. He can run routes. He can make catches in traffic. He can go up and get it. He has an insane vertical. And Parker, he went to a high school that's, notorious for winning a lot in football. Maybe you've heard of them. It's a little high school out in California referred to as Mater Day.
Yeah.
Only maybe the most dominant high school football program in the country.
Yeah. And he comes into a USC team who, he gets to play for the hometown school. So, nothing better than that. So I'm excited to see what this Trojan team does with Slovis as, throwing the ball to him.
Me too. Let's get let's go to the other coast and down in Miami with the Miami Hurricanes. The Miami Hurricanes have a ton of talent. There's a ton of receiving talent in this group. They lost one of the top tight ends in the country from a season ago, but Will Mallory was National Tight End of the Week twice last season. He's going to get a big chance to step up and be their starting tight end this year. And a guy that I'm really excited for that I think is really going to elevate this group, Parker. We talked about it in the ACC preview last week. but they get the big time transfer from Oklahoma, Charleston Rambo, who had 1,200 yards in 3 years at Oklahoma. But this is a big three. This is a big play threat. He's going to instantly be Miami's best weapon, and he's going to help Derek King a ton. I'm very excited to see Charleston Rambo in the orange and green.
I am too, and he's a talented player. And then they have, or they lost Will Mallory, who was a great talent at tight end for the Hurricanes. But of course they have Rambo, who was great at Oklahoma. He had almost 1,200 yards in 3 years there. So the guy's really talented. This I don't think you could ask for much more of your Derek King, because this wide receiver room is good, and especially with Rambo, they're going to be talented.
They are. Let's get to Iowa State. This is one of my favorite teams in the country, Parker, because I just think they have everything. They have one of the best defenses in the country. They have Brock Purdy, who I think is one of the top quarterbacks, not just in the country, but also for the NFL draft. They have, one of the top running backs in the country as well. I'm just stoked to see this team. Breece Hall, I'm stoked to see this team on the field. And I made a semi-bold prediction and picked them to win the Big 12 over Oklahoma. But their receivers are just as good as any other part of this roster. They have one of the best tight end rooms in the country with Charlie Kolar and Chase Allen, who are both all Big 12. They also have wide receiver Xavier Hutchinson. He's one of the best receivers in the Big 12. And they get back a guy who averaged almost 21 yards a catch before missing all of last year with an injury in Tariq Milton. So Milton and Hutchinson are going to be nice on the outside, and then with Kolar and Allen in the middle and Breece Hall at running back, this Iowa State offense is going to be absolutely disgusting, and I'm very excited to see what they do in Ames.
I am too. They're going to be fun. This Iowa State team is, they continue to get better every single year. And it's a credit to the athletic department and the coaching staff at Iowa State.
Matt Campbell's one hell of a coach.
He is, and their tight ends are great. They have Collar and Chase Allen, who were, like you said, both Big 12 last year. Xavier Hutchinson is their one receiver by a long shot, and then they'll have Milton back, who was injured. But 2 years ago he had 720 yards receiving. So this Iowa State team in Ames is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
They are. Let's get to Texas and Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian did a pretty good job at Alabama with the wide receivers after, Jalen Waddle went down with an injury, as, Devontae Smith went on to win the Heisman. But Sarkisian really likes the group he has at Texas. They have 11, former 4- and 5-star recruits on this roster. So this Texas team has all the talent in the world. They're a little inexperienced, but if Sarkisian can get half out of them what he got out of Smith and Waddle, I mean, this Texas receiving core is going to be really good.
Yeah, they are. Sarkisian has a really talented receiving room here in Austin. They're going to be good. They have a lot of great players here in Austin. They lose Waddle at Alabama, but Sarkisian, brings up some guys that are really good. You have Jerry Jeudy, you have Devontae Smith, you have Jalen Waddle, all in the last 3 or 4 years to go. Yeah, Ruggs as well, to go through Alabama. So Sarkisian's done a heck of a job at Alabama. And he has some great talent here in Texas.
He sure does. Nevada is going to be the first team we talk about out of the Power 5. Elijah Cooks led the Wolfpack with 900 yards in 2019. He was hurt all of last year. He will be back. Romeo Dobbs took over last season, had 1,000 yards in a shortened season, which is insanely impressive. And then tight end Cole Turner was their number 2 with Cooks out. So they get their top 6 receivers from last year back, but they also get Elijah Cooks back, and they add the Washington transfer Marquise Spiker, and from Arkansas Pine Bluff, they add Harry Ballard. So they were really good last year, and now they get 2 really talented transfers and their top guy, Elijah Cooks, back. So this Nevada team looks really, really good. I think they can compete with Boise in the Mountain West. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. But their receiving room is definitely going to be a huge part of that.
Yeah, they are. Nevada is a talented team. Cooks had almost 1,000 yards in 2019. Got hurt last year. Romeo Dobbs was good 2 years ago as well. And then Cole Turner was number 2 on the team as well with 600 yards. So they have all of their top receivers back. And then they add Spiker and Ballard. Both those guys are talented players. Spiker coming from Washington, and then Ballard coming from Arc Pine Bluff. So this Nevada team's fun. Like you said, our first team that's not the Power Five that we're going to talk about here today, and they're a good one for sure.
Let's move on. Let's stay in the Mountain West and talk about Fresno State. Jalen Cropper, one of the fastest wide receivers in the country, absolutely elite speed. He's, the modern college football's John Ross or Tyreek Hill. He's that kind of fast. Jalen Cropper, I'm really excited to see him out at Fresno this year. 520 yards in just 6 games last season. 5 wide receivers had 100 yards receiving last year, and they are all back. As well as the top 3 tight ends. And then they also add in a Washington transfer in Ty Jones. Nevada and Boise are probably going to get all the talk in the Mountain West. But if this Fresno receiving core can, elevate their game, and maybe they put some good pressure on the rest of the team and they can exceed expectations.
They get a lot of guys back too. They return all of their top 3 tight ends. And they're a talented team. They add in Jones from Washington, who, was great, with Washington. So, of course, and then they have Cropper, who's, lightning quick. So this Fresno State team is going to be fun. And like this is, they're very underrated.
They are. Alabama's an interesting one, Parker, because a lot of the teams on this list, we're talking about guys coming back. We're talking about, receiving rooms that have experience and have depth. Alabama lost Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. So you're thinking they're kind of starting from the bottom again, but that's not true at all. They had to replace a pair of, 5-star receivers along with their starting tight end. But they have 15 4- and 5-star receivers on this roster. The question is not if they're going to be okay or not. It's just, which of these guys is going to end up being the next stars of college football. They have a lot of guys to pick from. But we're at the point, Parker, where Alabama's coaching staff and Nick Saban know exactly what they're doing. Whatever 2 or 3 receivers they put out there in week 1 are going to end up being stars in college football.
Yeah, they are. Alabama, of course, is going to have, great players. They always do. Devontae Smith won the Heisman last year at Alabama as a receiver. So they're going to have a talented team. They always do. So wide receivers is, they're not hard to find at Alabama, because who wouldn't want to play wide receiver at the University of Alabama? So they're going to have a good group like they always do.
And I know I already know that one of the guys that they're going to, probably trot out there early in the season is the Ohio State transfer, Jamison Williams. Jamison Williams is the starting slot receiver at Ohio State for the last 2 years. And transferred to Alabama because Julian Fleming, the number 1 receiver in the country, committed to Ohio State. But Jamison Williams will step in right away and probably be the most experienced guy on that Alabama roster. So I expect to see a lot of him in week 1 in that game against who are they playing in week 1? I know it's kind of a relatively big game. Bama, are they playing, was it Miami or Virginia Tech?
Oh, I want to say Miami.
I can't remember who it was. That bugs me. I'm going to actually look that up. But I know they're going to be ready for week 1, and I know Jamison Williams is going to be ready. You're right. It is Miami and Atlanta. So that'll be a fun matchup in week 1, Parker. 2 top, Derek King and the Hurricanes. They'll bring Will Mallory and Charleston Rambo to town, and they'll take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. So that could end up being a shootout of a game because it's 2 really good offenses.
Yeah, it is. And that's going to be a fun, like you said, fun game. Derek King with their talented receivers at Miami, going up against whoever the heck Alabama's quarterback is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know they're going to be good because Alabama.
I think it's going to be that. I might be wrong, but I think it's going to be that freshman that they have on their roster that's like gotten like all the sponsorship deals and all the hype surrounding him. I think his name is like Bryce Young. I want to say.
Sounds right.
I gotta see. Here's another thing I'm gonna look up, but I think it's like Bryce Young or something like that. But he's a 5-star recruit. He's actually considered. He was considered a higher recruit than Tua, which you know how good Tua ended up being. But yeah, Bryce Young, number 9, the sophomore from Pasadena, California, another Mater Day alum. he, I believe, is in line to be the starting quarterback for the Tide this year. And everything I've heard so far, and summer practices and summer workouts and stuff, this kid's legit. He seems like he's going to be a stud.
He does, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them. And they're going to be good. Alabama, Miami, one of their first games is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited.
I am too. Penn State. Penn State's always had sneaky good receivers, Parker, with Allen Robinson, Juwan Johnson. They have Mike Gesicki at wide or tight end. This is always a slept-on receiving core, I feel like. I feel like Penn State has always had really, really strong receivers. They always have that 6'5" guy that I feel like just goes up and bosses everyone. Jahan Dotson had almost 900 yards in just 9 games last year and turned down the NFL and came back for his senior season. True freshman Parker Washington had almost 500 yards as well. They have 6 of their top 7 back, as well as a pair of NFL caliber tight ends. What did I just say, Parker? James Franklin, I mean, he's not Ryan Day, but he knows how to recruit receivers and tight ends. Penn State's always got strong receivers and tight ends. Now, the question is, can they put everything together? But their receiving room is really good.
Yeah, they are. Penn State's going to be fun. James Franklin, like you said, always puts together a really good team. They have Doxson, who's going to be good. He had played 9 games last year, like you said, almost 900 yards, turned down the draft. And then they bring in Parker Washington, who had almost 500 yards. So, and then they have 2 really, really strong tight ends. So this Penn State team is lots of fun, and they're going to be good.
Yeah, they are. Number 14, LSU, back down in the South. Keyshawn, oh, good Lord, I'm going to butcher this. I think it's Keyshawn Bout. But he had 730 yards as a true freshman last season. They have 10 4 and 5 stars on this roster. So the Tigers have the talent to be dangerous, like always. And, LSU is like Alabama or like Clemson or whatever. I don't care how many freshmen and sophomores they have. They're always going to be good because they always have that kind of talent. Ed Ogeron, really good recruiter. He's always going to have talent in place on this roster. And Bout's going to, as a sophomore, Bout's already going to be, the number 1 receiver on this roster. But the talent's there. I don't know if it's going to be as good as teams like Bama and A&M and other teams in this conference, but I do know it's going to be pretty good. LSU is definitely going to have the talent and every, bit of potential to try and compete for an SEC championship.
Yeah, they are. They're going to be fun. LSU is always fun. We talked about them earlier that, they've had guys like Jarvis Landry, guys like Odell Beckham come out of LSU, and so they're going to be good. And Ed Orgeron, always fun to watch. I love watching his press conferences, but certainly the LSU Tigers are going to have a fun group.
And the final team we're going to talk about today in the top wide receiver rooms in Division I is the UCF Knights out of the American Conference. UCF's a fun team to watch, Parker, because they have a lot of speed in this receiving core. Not a lot of big guys, but a lot of speed. And they bring back 2 of those top 4 speed guys from a season ago. They also add Notre Dame transfer Jordan Johnson, who's a former number 5 receiver in the country. So that's a big get for the UCF Knights, as well as Colorado State transfer Nate Craig Myers. I'm really excited to see Johnson play for UCF because this is kind of the big guy that they've been looking for on this roster. And it's going to be exciting to see him, make an impact on this team. And this, like I said, this receiving core in the past has been kind of more of a speed built roster. And now, with Jordan Johnson, it's kind of changing the stereotype that comes with this team where they went out and got Big Cat Bryan as well from Auburn, who's, expected to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. He's absolutely enormous, 6'5", 250-pound defensive lineman. But Jordan Johnson is the big receiver that they've always wanted here at UCF, and he's going to make an impact right away as he stands 6'3", and he's going to be a huge piece out of Notre Dame. He's a little undersized at 185, but he, for the first time in 2-3 years, UCF finally has a guy that can go up and get jump balls.
Yeah, they do. UCF is going to be a fun team. Like you said, they lose Mackenzie Milton, but they have two of their top guys back, and they're fast. They're fun to watch. UCF is a fun team, and they've been good for a while. But this team is going to be, quite possibly more fun than any team we've seen, especially with the talent they have.
No doubt about it. And so that is going to do it for our college football segment this week. A lot of really, really good receiving cores in college football, Parker. I mean, I know a majority of those teams we talked about came out of Power Five conferences, but I'll tell you what. I mean, we've talked about some of these mid-major conferences. We've previewed the Mountain West. We've previewed the Independents. We've previewed the American. We still got to do conferences like the MAC and like the Sun Belt and stuff like that. But almost every team in the country has one, some most of the time even two receivers that are really, really intriguing. So it's not like it's ever been a problem in my life to be motivated to watch college football. But I feel like you could find me watching Ball State and Eastern Michigan on a Thursday night because there will be some receiver that I'm going to want to watch from either team.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about the MAC yet. We will, but MAC football is fun. So anywhere there's a really talented player, you certainly can find them. And you will go out of your way to watch them because that's what we do. So this receiving landscape in college football this season is going to be a blast.
It sure is. And so that brings us to our baseball topic that I wanted to do today. A lot has changed in Major League Baseball since we last talked. A lot of guys in different places, like we talked about at the beginning of the show. Max Scherzer and Trey Turner out in L.A. Jose Barrios went north of the border to Toronto. Um, Another big move that happened is Trevor Story was not traded. Um, we saw the Padres go get Adam Frazier. We saw the Tampa Bay Rays go get Nelson Cruz. We saw the Yankees go get Anthony Rizzo and Joey Gallo. I mean, baseball's changed so much in the last 5 days. So I wanted to go look at the schedule, look at the standings, and say, look, for most of the teams we talk about will be contenders, whether it's for a wild card spot or a division or whatever. But some teams, like the Cubs, like the Nationals, some teams like that, it'll be interesting to see kind of where they stand after the trade deadline as well. So I'm going to start. We're going to start with the AL East because I'm really intrigued by the AL East. And this hurts me to say, Parker, because I know both of our favorite team in this division is the Red Sox. But I'm going to be a little harsh to the Red Sox here, and I don't think they did enough at the deadline for me. I think they got worse because the Yankees and Rays got better, if that makes sense. I don't think they got worse talent-wise on the roster. I just think they got worse situation because the Rays and Yankees got better. I would have loved to see them add a starter just for some depth, but it seems like they're putting way too much confidence in Chris Sale being an ace when he gets back, which he very well could be. He's supposed to be back sometime in the next 2 weeks, but he hasn't pitched in 2 years. So I would have been really comfortable if they went out and got a I don't even know who I'm thinking of, like a Zach Davies or like a you call the Twins and you get Kenta Maeda or something like that. Just somebody that can give you a little bit of insurance if Chris Sale isn't Chris Sale. So love the Red Sox. I still think they're a really good team that makes the playoffs, but I think the Rays and Yankees got a lot closer.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm with you on the Red Sox. They added Schwarber, but I don't think they did what they should have done. Like you said, they needed to add. They needed a bat, but I think they needed to beef up their rotation a little bit. But and they didn't do that. So you have the Yankees who of course got Gallo and Rizzo, but you have these teams that you're leading this division, and you if you want to stay ahead in this division, you need to be good, and you need to keep the pace that you have. The Yankees are gonna, I think they're gonna, after what they've done at the deadline, I think they're gonna pick up the pace a little bit, win a few more games. I hope they don't, but I think they will.
Yeah.
And then of course the Rays got better too. So this AL East is fun, but the Red Sox didn't do enough, like you said.
The Rays, I love what the Rays did. The Rays went out and got Nelson Cruz. The Rays went out and got crap. I'm gonna have to pull up all the deadline moves and stuff. But I know the Rays went out and got JT Chargois from the Seattle Mariners, which I will tell you, Parker, I think that's a really slept on move because I know a lot of people know the name Diego Castillo and they're like, why would the Rays give him up to the Mariners for nothing when they're competing? But JT Chargois has about the same numbers, the same strikeout rate, the same ERA, the same, whip, all that kind of stuff as Castillo. And he's 2 years younger with 3 more years of control. So this is just another one of those moves that I think was under the radar, just brilliant by the Tampa Bay Rays. They give up a guy that has pitched in the World Series and gives the Mariners a bona fide closer, but they get a guy back that's put up the same numbers and they get him for 3 more years. So I love that move to get Chargois. I love the move to get Nelson Cruz because they have a lot of guys that hit for contact and get on base. Nelson Cruz is that big thunder bat that they needed. And I love this move for Tampa Bay. They have top prospects like Luis Patino and Shane McClanahan that are going to help as well. But they went out and they didn't make the biggest moves. I know they were in for a while on guys like Scherzer and Bryant. They never got any of those big names. But Cruz and Chargois going to help this team go a long way. Chargois adds another top reliever, a Rays bullpen that's always good. But Nelson Cruz is going to be such a big impact for this team. And they already showed it. They swept the Red Sox this weekend.
Yeah, they did. And the Rays look really good. And I love like you said, I love the addition of Nelson Cruz. You're going to have, talent there. What he's doing at 41 years old is spectacular. And then you get Chargois, who's a really talented arm. So you have lots of great players here. The Rays did very well. Nelson Cruz, like you said, they needed a big power bat, and they got it. So this Rays team is going to be fun, and I think both the Yankees and the Rays are going to be nipping on the heels of the Red Sox here pretty soon.
Yeah. We got the AL East is going to be, maybe the division we spend the most time on today because I think they have 4 teams that you could say are quote unquote competing. But let's get to the Yankees. The Yankees, as much as I hate to admit it because I dislike them, they went out and got Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo, who are great pieces. Anthony Rizzo had a huge weekend this weekend. He's the exact kind of bat that they need in that lineup, where they have a lot of righties that swing and miss. Anthony Rizzo is a guy that's going to be a left-hander that works good at bats, draws walks, puts the ball in play, hits for power, plays a great defensive first base. Luke Voit wasn't a bad player by any means, but Anthony Rizzo is such an upgrade there at first base over Voit. And then Joey Gallo in the outfield. I mean, Joey Gallo is going to swing and miss a lot, but he gets on base. He draws a lot of walks. He's a great defender in right field, and he hits absolute tanks, and he's going to do the same thing at Yankee Stadium. They also added Andrew Heaney from the Angels, who I like a lot as a lefty. He's one of my favorite underrated lefty starters in the league. So as much as I hate to admit it, I think Cashman had one heck of a deadline.
He did, and he needed to. We talked about that. If he didn't have a really good deadline and the Yankees missed the playoffs, Cashman loses his job. That's just the bottom line. So he needed to have a good deadline. You had Rizzo, you had Gallo, you had Heaney. Cashman had a heck of a deadline. Like you said, didn't want him to, but he did. And I think the Yankees are gonna pick it up the pace here a little bit.
Before the deadline, I would have said that the Red Sox were A, the Rays were B, and the Yankees were C. Now I look at these 3 teams, and I'd say the Rays are 1A, the Red Sox are 1B, and the Yankees are 1C. They're neck and neck now in my eyes. And I don't know if the Yankees have enough time to track them down, but I think they're all pretty equal in terms of talent now. This is a dogfight for the AL East.
Yeah, it is. All these teams are good, and they've been close all year long. The Blue Jays are fun.
They are.
I really like watching the Blue Jays. They've done a lot with Bichette, with Vladdy Jr., with Semien, with Grichuk, with Springer. This team's fun, and they have talented pitchers there as well. So I'm loving what the Blue Jays are doing. The Red Sox, of course, are fun to watch. They're leading the division. And then you have the Yankees and the Rays, who aren't out of it by any means. So the AL East is, I think, the most fun division in baseball.
And I'm glad you brought up the Blue Jays because they're going to be the last team we talk about here in the East. They went out and added Jose Barrios. Now, I will say, I think they gave up a little bit too much for me Austin Martin is one of the top hitting prospects in all of baseball. And then they also gave up their top pitching prospect in Simeon. Oh, well, I should say their top pitching prospect other than Nate Pearson in Simeon Woods Richardson, who they got in the trade with the Mets for crap. Who did they get in that deal? Who did the Mets get in that deal? Trade with the Blue Jays. I don't remember, but whatever. They made a trade with the Mets. They got Simeon Woods Richardson in that deal. I feel like it was a starter. Oh, it was the Mats trade, I think. Yeah, I think
that sounds right.
I think that's what happened. But whatever. Simeon Woods Richardson was a Met, went to the Blue Jays. Now he's a Twin with Austin Martin in exchange for Jose Barrios. I do like the Barrios fit in Toronto. He pitched really, really well on Sunday in his first game, and I think he's going to be a big fit for or big help for this team. But I do think they gave up a lot for him. But I will say, as fun as Toronto's been to watch this year, Vladdy could very well win MVP. I still think they're a year away. I think they're a tier behind the top three we just mentioned in New York, Boston, and Tampa. It's a really good team, and Barrios is under contract for all of next year too. I'd say they're still a year away, though. I think next year they compete for the AL East, but this year I think they're just going to come up a little bit short.
Yeah, I think so too. The Blue Jays are fun and they're fun to watch, but I don't think this is the year for them. The Rays, Red Sox, Yankees look like they're going to be the top three in this division, and and as they should be because they've been good, with the exception of the Yankees, who I think are going to get better. But all these teams are talented for sure, and I think they're going to have one heck of a second half.
I do too. We only got, well, after talking about four teams in the AL East, we only have one team to talk about in the AL Central, and that's the Chicago White Sox. I'm not going to lie, Parker. The White Sox had one of my favorite deadlines in all of baseball. They went out and they added Cesar Hernandez, who is such a perfect fit to fill in for the injured Nick Madrigal, who actually I'll get to in a second, but Nick Madrigal is no longer a White Sox. But Cesar Hernandez is such a perfect fit to fill that hole at second base for the rest of the season. Switch hitter, gets on base, has power, great defender, won the Gold Glove last year. Perfect fit for Tony La Russa's lineup. They get Eloy Jimenez back. They're about to get Luis Robert back. They add in a couple pieces as well. And then the big piece in the bullpen, they go out and they get Craig Kimbrell in exchange for Nick Madrigal and Cody Hire. It's a lot to give up. You're giving up 6 years of Nick Madrigal for a year and a half of Craig Kimbrell. But I respect Rick Hahn and what he said. And he said, this is a unique team in a unique situation. And we wanted to show the fans we're willing to do anything to win a World Series. Now they have Bummer, Kopech, Hendricks, and Kimbrell. It's right up there with Milwaukee, in my opinion, for best bullpen in baseball now. And this White Sox team is my favorite in the AL now. I tweeted about it semi-jokingly, and I said, congratulations to the White Sox on clinching the 2021 World Series. But I partially mean it. This is a team that, they didn't even need a closer. They just made their bullpen better. Now they can bring Kimbrell or Hendrickson when they need outs from a big name, a high leverage reliever. It doesn't need to be the ninth inning. It can be the sixth, the seventh, whatever. And they also have Bummer and Kopech. So, this is a team on paper that doesn't have any weaknesses, and they look like a World Series team.
Yeah, they do. They're fun. The White Sox are, I love what La Russa is doing. He's had some questionable moments this season, but I love what they're doing. And you can't argue with success. They're in great shape. They look like they're a lot of fun. Of course, you've had great pitching there with Rodon, with Lance Lynn, with Dallas Keuchel. Great pitching there in Chicago. And then, of course, you have Tim Anderson. They just sent away Madrigal, who had been good. And then they get back Kimbrell, who is an excellent piece here for him. He was great with the Cubs. So he's going to come a little bit further south and try to do the same thing that he's been doing with the Cubs and with the White Sox. And I think he's going to have some tremendous success with that because he's good and he's really good. So this White Sox team, like you said, they've gotten a whole lot better, and they look like a World Series contender for sure.
They do. AL West, there's two teams I want to talk about in this conference, or this division. The Astros. The Astros' big weakness this season has been bullpen. And I think they did a great job going out and addressing that. They went and got, from the Mariners, Rafael Montero, who's had a tough year, but he was really good in Texas last season, and he's got nasty stuff. So he's kind of a, take a chance on it and hope he fixes it project. They also get Kendall Graveman, who's had one heck of a year. He has like a .6 ERA. He's been absolutely disgusting. And then they go out and call the Marlins and get Yimi Garcia. So they had 3 relievers that I think are going to make this bullpen a lot better. They're getting Pedro Baez back. They have Ryan Presley. So this went from a below average bullpen to, I'd say, below an above average bullpen. So I think Houston did a really good job at the deadline. And I think the White Sox, personally, to me, I think the White Sox are the team to beat in the AL, but Houston's not far behind.
No, they're not. Not by any means. They're fun. Houston it has been, up and down, but, Dusty Baker has this team in a great spot. So I enjoy watching the Astros. They've been good. I didn't think they were going to be great, but they've surprised me. So I like watching the Astros. The AL West has been fun this year, Shea.
It has. Let's talk about the Oakland A's. I know the Mariners and Angels aren't out of it yet, but they didn't make any huge moves at the deadline. The Mariners went and got Diego Castillo, who we kind of touched on earlier. But the A's went out and got Starling Marte. And that is a big get for this team. That's going to be a guy that, is right up there with Matt Olson for the best hitter on this team. But I love this move for the A's now. I think this makes them a playoff team, a move like this for Starling Marte. I think this makes them a playoff team. This is the bat they were missing, a guy that consistently gets on base, a guy that hits for average and can help Matt Olson because Matt Chapman's had a down year and Laureano's inconsistent with the bat. But they gave up Jesus Luzardo for this guy. And right now, I don't think the A's care about that because they get Starling Marte and they're trying to make a run at a World Series. And I completely understand that because that's what we talked about with, the White Sox giving up Madrigal for Kimbrel. But if Marte walks in free agency after the season's over, I mean, I know Luzardo has like a 6 ERA this year, but this is a former top 15 prospect in baseball, Parker. You just gave the Marlins a top tier arm, left-hander with a 98-mile-an-hour sinker, a nasty slider, and a curveball for 2 months of Starling Marte. So I do like the fit of Marte in Oakland. But much like the Barrios trade, I think they gave up a lot for him.
Yeah, they do, and it's crazy what they had to give up for him because they needed a guy, but I didn't want him to give up that much. Luzardo's really good.
He is.
So I'm surprised that they gave him up. But the deal is, how are they going to use him? I talked a little bit about this last week when that happened, but how are they going to use him? Because they have Kana, they have Laureano, and they have Piscotty, as their outfield. And I think that the most likely spot for Marte is right field to replace Piscotty, who's been average at best this year. Or is it a fourth outfielder type, platoon role? It's really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what Bob Melvin does.
It is. And just a little bit really quick because we're not going to talk about the Marlins as contenders in the NL East, but credit to Kim Min-ji, man, the GM for the Marlins, because this team is set up now in the future. We're 2-3 years from now, potential Marlins rotation. Okay, let's walk through it. Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, Sixto Sanchez, Trevor Rogers, who very well could win Rookie of the Year this year. It's between him and Jonathan India. Eliezer Hernandez, Jesus Luzardo, and in case you forgot, they also used the number 3 overall pick in the draft 2 years ago on a guy named Max Meyer, who is also one of the top 25 prospects in baseball right now. So that's 7 top-tier pitching prospects that are all 26 years old or younger. The future of the Marlins looks absolutely disgusting.
It does, and they look like they're fun. Of course, they have a couple Wright State grads here with Burdick, with JD Orr.
I'm glad you brought that up. Before you get into that, I will mention Kim Min-ji did a press conference like 2 days ago, and she said, and I quote, I retweeted it, Peyton Burdick is an option long-term in center field for the Marlins. So, Raider gang getting some love there.
Yes, but like you said, and then of course they just drafted Strand. So they have lots of talent here. The Marlins prospect system or their farm system is quite honestly it might be one of the best in baseball.
I think definitely on the pitching front. I mean, they have hitting prospects like J.J. Bleday, like you said, Peyton Burdick. I mean, it's a team that has a ton of talent. Jazz Chisholm still considered a really young player, obviously. So I love the future of the Marlins. I think even as soon as like late next year, I think this could be a team that's on the rise. So let's get to the NL East. We only have 2 or 3 minutes here before we have to take a break, but we'll finish this up to start off hour number 2 before we get into our tier list. But National League East, the New York Mets go out and get Javier Baez, as well as Trevor Williams, just for some starting depth, with DeGrom being kind of on the shelf for a little bit longer. They also grab Rich Hill. I think the Rich Hill move was good. I like that they added a soft tossing lefty to kind of throw people off from Walker and Syndergaard and DeGrom, who all throw just nothing but heat. So I like the Rich Hill move, and I really like the Javi Baez move too, because what this is going to do for them is when Baez is playing shortstop right now while Lindor's hurt. But when Lindor comes back, you move Javi Baez to second, you move McNeil to third, and then you either have JD Davis coming off the bench, or you can move McNeil to the outfield, give Dom Smith and guys like Conforto more days off, turn McNeil into a super utility guy. So this gives the Mets a lot of options. I'm not the biggest Javier Baez fan by any means, but I think the Baez fit in New York made a lot of sense. So I think the Mets had a good deadline.
I think they did too. What the Mets did, I liked. I was kind of curious to see what they were going to do with Baez with Lindor there, but I think they're going to have Baez kind of play second here a little bit. So I think the Mets had a good deadline. They added Baez, they added a few other pieces. The Mets are fun.
They are. Another team in this division, the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies stayed relatively quiet, Parker, until deadline day. And then they went out and got Kyle Gibson from the Rangers, as well as Ian Kennedy. Now, is that going to be enough for them to catch the Mets? I don't think so. But it was a trade that I liked because I don't think they gave up a ton to get them. And Philly is the kind of market with the kind of budget where they could easily re-sign those guys in the offseason. So it's a move to make the Phillies better, not just this year, but also down the road. I think it was a good move, but just in my opinion, from what I've seen, I don't think it's enough for them to catch the Mets.
I don't think so either. It's going to be tough for them to catch the Mets. Of course they have some great pieces, but I really, really wanted to see him do a little bit more. The Phillies seem like that team that they try they try and they try and they try to make their fans happy, but disappoint every single time. So
Life of
I
being like
think
a sports team.
right. So I think they need they need that one big every team has that one big year that they've been building for. The Phillies need that year, and they need that soon. So hopefully we'll see them, kind of, if not next year, hopefully it's the year after that because they need that very soon.
I'll tell you what, almost everything that could have gone wrong for the Braves this year has gone wrong. With Ozuna's situation off the field, which actually I'm not going to talk about it on this show because I don't like talking about stuff like that. But there was a new development that came out in the Marcell Ozuna case where he could be back sooner than we thought he could. It sounded like he wasn't going to be coming back to baseball for a very long time, maybe ever. But there were some new storylines that came out that made it sound like that it was less all his fault and more like both of their faults, which makes it sound like, from what I read, Ozuna could be back with the Braves next season. Which
Yeah, yeah.
I don't condone what he did off the field. And if you're interested in that, you can go read for yourself. I'm not going to bring it up on the show. But I don't condone by any means what he did off the field. But if he does come back on the field, that helps the Braves a lot.
Right, right. And they look like they it could help them. But personally, I don't see Ozuna back anytime soon.
No.
It's possible that he could come back soon, but I don't see
I don't think it's this year. I think it's next year. But Acuna's out for the year with a torn ACL. Ozuna's out for what we think is the year. But I give credit to this team because they're still, only a few games out in the division. And they don't want to give up on the year yet, and I respect that. So they went out and they got Richard Rodriguez, which I think was a great move from the Pittsburgh Pirates. And they went out and they got low risk, high reward guys at the deadline, guys like Adam Duvall, guys like Jorge Soler. I love that move. Jorge Soler has been playing right field for the Braves the last 2 days. Not only has he gotten like 4 hits and a home run in his first 2 games as a Brave, he also has made a couple outstanding plays in the outfield, which is crazy because he hasn't played right field in like 4 years. So I like what the Braves did. Now, is it enough for them to get to the playoffs without Acuna and without Ozuna? I don't know. I don't think so. But I respect them for not throwing in the towel, and I do like the Duvall and Soler moves. I really like the Soler move.
I do too. They needed to have a another bat there. That they did, and they got Soler. That Soler move, I think, is going to be really good for them. And it's they're a fun team for sure.
They are. Final team we're going to talk about here in the NL East, and then we're going to step away for just a few moments, and then we'll do the Central and the West when we come back. But the Washington Nationals. Now, this team is not competing by any means after what happened, but they traded Max Scherzer, they traded Trey Turner, but I did want to talk about briefly what they got back. They got Keibert Ruiz, who's going to be their starting catcher like this week, and they got Josiah Gray, who is going to be with Strasburg and Corbin at the top of that rotation for years to come. So I will say that I was surprised. I wasn't surprised that they traded Scherzer. I was very surprised that they traded Turner, and I was very surprised that they traded them both in the same deal. But what they got was pretty good. And Keibert Ruiz and Keibert Ruiz and Josiah Gray are going to be, huge pieces of the Nationals for years to come. So they had to, I feel like they were kind of, cornered where they had to kind of make a decision, and they made a decision. And I know it's always hard to trade your stars, but I think considering they had to do it, quote unquote, what they got back was pretty good. So they're going to stink for a few years, but they got a couple guys that are going to be really, really good.
Yeah, they did, and I think that they sent off the guys that we thought they shouldn't have, but they're gonna benefit from it down the road, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this was a move. We'll talk about the Cubs on the other side of the break, but I think this was very similar to what the Cubs had to do as well, where, yeah, the fans aren't going to like it. And yeah, it's hard for the front office and the ownership and the fan base to say goodbye to guys that, were the cornerstones of championship teams like Max Scherzer, like Trey Turner, like Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez. But at the end of the day, it's what's best for the organization. And in a couple of years, the Cubs could be a very good team again with guys like Nick Madrigal, with guys like Cody Hire out of their bullpen, with guys like, some of the guys that they got in those Bryant and Rizzo deals. So I know it hurts now for Nationals fans losing Scherzer and Turner, but I think you're going to learn to like the guys named Keibert Ruiz and Josiah Gray. So I think this is a good move for the Nats down the road. But we're going to step away for just a few minutes, take our legal ID. When we come back, we still got a couple more divisions to talk about, Parker. The Brewers and Reds made moves, as did the Dodgers, Nationals, and Padres. So a couple more teams we got to get into. We're going to step away for just a few moments. When we come back, it's hour number 2 of Keep It Real. We'll finish this up, and we'll also do a tier list of NFL running backs. Don't go anywhere. Keep it real. Keep it locked. We'll see you in a few. All right, I promised y'all it was just going to be a quick break, but we still have a lot to get into here today on this Monday afternoon. But I'm Shea Neal, alongside with me Parker Testa. This is Keep It Real with Testa and Neal. Only 2 weeks left in the summer semester, so we got to take short breaks because we got to fit a lot of stuff into these next 2 weeks. But let's pick it up with where we left off, Parker. The National League Central. We'll start with the Milwaukee Brewers, who are having one heck of a year. I mean, this team is really, really good. And I don't know. I mean, I expected them to be good. I did not expect them to be 20 games over 500 heading into August. But they go out at the deadline. They add a couple pieces for their bullpen. From the Marlins, they get John Curtis, as well as from the I forget who else they got, but I know they got Eduardo Escobar from the Arizona Diamondbacks. That's a big time move. But they added Daniel Norris, as well, from the Detroit Tigers. So Norris gives them an extra lefty out of the pen. Curtis has really good numbers this year, and they have him under control for like 4 years. And then Escobar is going to give them a switch hitter that can play third base and first base. So I really like what the Brewers did, and that frustrates me because I'm a fan of a team that's trying to track down the Brewers, but I think they definitely made moves that made them better, and I think one of their few weaknesses in the throughout the course of the season was they weren't getting a lot of production out of first base and third base. Escobar is going to change that, and their bullpen's already really good, but they had a couple depth arms that's going to make it even better. So David Stearns continues to show that he's one of the top executives in baseball, and he has a killer deadline.
He does, and it's fun. I'm loving watching this. It's been fun. This deadline I think was the most fun deadline we've had in the last few years.
No doubt.
Lots of big guys were on the move. Some guys got traded that we didn't expect to be traded. So this was fun, Shea. I'm loving it.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about moves made at the deadline, Parker, but maybe the most impactful trade made all season was the Brewers getting Adames back in May. I mean, imagine where the Brewers would be without Willie Adames. This guy's been a top 8 shortstop in baseball ever since he got traded to Milwaukee. He's hitting like 315 with like a 900 OPS since he got traded to the Brewers, and he's single-handed because Yelich has been underwhelming this year. Adames has saved the Brewers offense.
He has, and the Brewers are, they've been at the top of the division almost all year long. The Reds are nipping on their heels, but they needed to have a good deadline. I think they did, and if they didn't, it would be, I think, game over for the Brewers. And we'd see teams like the Reds and the Cardinals catch up a bit, but
yeah.
I think they had a good deadline,
yeah.
and they needed to add a piece to their offense. Their rotation's already great, but they needed to add a piece to this offense, and I think they did that. So I think the Brewers had a successful week last week.
Yeah, let's get to the Reds. The Reds went out and got Luis Cessa and Justin Wilson from the Yankees. Justin Wilson had an ERA over 7. He wasn't doing very good this year, but he has not given up a run since he's gotten to Cincinnati. Cessa's been really good as well. Givens has been electric in 3 games with the Reds. So they definitely made the bullpen better. My issue was I wish they would have added an impact bat. I wish they would have gotten a guy like maybe this is a little ambitious of me, but a guy like a Byron Buxton, or even to some lesser degree, maybe like a Josh Harrison from the Nationals, maybe like a Jesus Aguilar or an Adam Duvall or something like that. They didn't do that, and Tyler Naquin's been hot and cold all year, so we don't know what Tyler Naquin we're getting every day. Shogo Akiyama can't hit the ball out of the infield. Aristides Aquino can't hit the ball at all. So it just feels like the Reds don't have the offensive depth that other teams have. Where you look at the Brewers, they have Colton Wong, they have Eduardo Escobar, they have Luis Urias, they have Willie Adames, they have Yelich, they have Kane, they have Tyrone Taylor, they have Narvaez, they have 7-8 guys that are really, really strong hitters. The Reds have India, Winker, Castellanos, Votto, Stevenson. That's great. But then at the bottom of the order, you see, and Farmer's been really good too, so I'll say 6. So far, because Farmer's been really good for about a month. But at the bottom of the order, you see Naquin. You don't know what Naquin you're getting. You see either Shogo or Aquino, who neither one of them are a threat, and you see the pitcher. So it feels like the Reds only have 2/3 of a lineup compared to other teams. So I think the Reds had a strong deadline, but I think it could have been stronger. And with what the Brewers did, I think the Reds got better, but I don't know if they got good enough to catch the Brewers. And that's a Reds fan saying that, so that breaks my heart, but that's where I'm sitting.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting to me about the Reds is they're better on the road statistically than they are at home.
Yes.
Their run differentials +1, and they're 6 games over 500.
Yeah.
The-
And I mean, I will throw out and say they've played 600 baseball. Let me pull up the stat because I saw this tweet earlier today. But the Reds, they frustrate me a lot because I think they blow games that they could easily win. But I will say something that caught my eye today, and this is from Nick Kirby, one of the Reds beat writers. But the Reds over the last 2 months have had their most difficult stretch of the schedule during the season. Their next, I told you earlier, Parker, they have 7 games against teams over 500 the rest of the year. So their schedule gets a lot easier. But the last 2 months was their hardest part of the schedule. They played 600 baseball, missing Senzel and Moustakis for 2 months, missing Sonny Gray for 3.5 weeks, missing TJ Antone for 6 weeks, missing Lucas Sims for a month, missing Nick Castellanos for 2 weeks, and missing Joey Votto for a week. They also played the Brewers, Padres, and Mets. They only were 3 games worse than the Brewers, who played at a clip of almost a 700 winning percentage. And their stretch over the next 2 months, like I said, it's a bunch of Twins, Pirates, Marlins, and like Cubs, who just sent every good player on their team away. So I'm not saying that they're out of it. I think the Brewers are really, really good, and it's going to be hard to catch them. But I will give the Reds this. They had a lot going against them in terms of a really bad bullpen, a lot of injuries, and a really tough schedule. And they did a really good job staying right there with the Brewers. So it's going to be a tough uphill climb to catch them, but they played good enough to baseball to make it a possibility to catch them. So I will give them credit for that.
Yeah, and I don't know how to take them really. They're a very up and down team. You know, I can always tell how the Reds are doing based on your Twitter. And
Yeah.
that's how I keep up. You know, if the tweets are, you know, Kyle Farmer's fantastic, things are great in Reds land, or
Yeah.
we can't pitch, fire David Bell, da 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 da, things are bad in Reds land. So it's very up and down, I think. But they've done surprisingly well. They've really, they've surpassed my expectations. But so we'll see. They're 7-3 in the last 10. That's the same record the Brewers have in their last 10. So if the Brewers kind of hit a slump and the Reds, take off a little bit, maybe we'll see the Reds at the top of this division come October.
It's possible. Let's get to the Cardinals, the last team I want to touch on here in this division. We can talk about the Cubs for 20 seconds. They sold every good player that they have, and they stink now. So that's basically what happened to the Cubs. They got rid of Rizzo, they got rid of Bryant, they got rid of Baez, they got rid of Kimbrel. So the Cubs went from being a barely average team to a really bad team. That's going to be really bad over the next 2 months. So, let's and just to tell you how bad they are. Rafael Ortega, who I know, he hit 3 home runs today for the Cubs, and they still lost. So that tells you how they're going to be over the next 2.5 months. But the Cardinals, I only threw the Cardinals in here because they're the Cardinals, and they always have this magic pixie dust that keeps them in the race, even though they're not good, and I don't get why it works. But this is a team that's wildly mediocre. Paul DeYoung's been terrible this year. Really, the only thing that's keeping them afloat is Tyler O'Neill, Harrison Bader, and Arenado and Goldschmidt. So I think they're an average baseball team. Their starting rotation is just decimated by injuries. I really thought the only way that the Cardinals had a shot of making a run at the playoffs was if they got like a Barrios or a Scherzer or somebody like that to give them a starter that can carry this rotation until guys like Flaherty and Michaelis get back. But they went out and got John Lester, J.A. Happ, and Wade LeBlanc. So I know that they are the Cardinals and that they have this magic pixie dust that keeps them in the playoff race until they have no business being there. But I think it's safe to say that I don't think they did enough to be in playoff baseball come October. I think that they're going to hover around 500 for probably most of the rest of the year. but I think it's safe to say that as of right now, August 1st, 2021, well, I guess August 2nd now, August 2nd, 2021, the NL Central is going to come down to two teams. It's either going to be the Brewers or the Reds that win this division.
I think that's fair. I like what the Cardinals did. You know, they like you said, they got Lester, Happ, and LeBlanc. Lester stinks, to be honest.
Hap isn't much better.
Yeah, Hap's all right, and LeBlanc isn't terrible. So I mean, you did okay, but like you said, you didn't do enough. Pirates stink. Cubs stink. Cardinals are Reds are okay, and the Brewers are not bad. So,
Right.
like you said,
That's a very fair assessment of the NL Central. The Pirates, ugh. The Cubs, the Cardinals, meh. The Reds, eh. And the Brewers, okay.
yeah. So that's so like you said, I'm with you on the fact that it's Reds or Brewers for this division right now.
No doubt. Let's get to the NL West because this got really fun. We'll start with the Giants. The Giants get Chris Bryant. The Giants get Tony Watson. The Giants get, they look really good. They didn't have to do much to this roster, and then they go out and get Chris Bryant. So this team is going to win 90 games. This team is going to be in the playoffs. And this team, I would have picked this team to win the division if the Dodgers didn't do what the Dodgers did. But it's still a really good team that's going to make the playoffs, and they got better with Chris Bryant. That was one heck of a deal by, Zaidi.
Yeah. Farhan Zaidi's been fantastic at the helm of the Giants since he took over. And they went out and they did what I didn't want them to do, and they got better. So you get Bryant, and to add to a roster that's already loaded. For whatever reason, they're good. I don't know how they're good, but they're good. Brandon Crawford's been good as well as Buster Posey. This team's good, and I don't know how, but they're good, and it's bothering me.
Well, I will give you this, and we'll get into the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers became the favorites in this division with what they did. They went out and got Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, as well as Danny Duffy. I think the only thing they could have done that could have made this the Armageddon purge trade deadline was if they got Kimbrel. But I mean, they still have a pretty good bullpen, and they just added Max Scherzer for crying out loud and Trey Turner. So the Giants got Chris Bryant, and normally I think, team in first place gets Chris Bryant at the trade deadline. They're locks to win the division, right? Well, the defending world champs happen to be in second and got Max Scherzer. So as where we're standing right now, the Giants are really good, but if I had to pick right now, I'd pick the Dodgers to win this division when it's all said and done.
I would too. And here's my dilemma, and it's not even really a dilemma. You're going to have to pick between Seager and Turner after the year, or after next year, whatever it is. You're going to have to pick one. Personally, I think Seager's cheaper. I think Turner's the better player. So which I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I don't know. Bad thing.
Here's the question. Has Bellinger gotten his extension yet?
Don't think so.
That might be part of what's weighing into this decision is they know they're going to have to pay Bellinger.
That's true. Scherzer, I was all right with. I would have been okay if they just got Scherzer. They wouldn't have had to give up as much.
They probably only would have had to give up Kybert and a couple mid prospects for Scherzer.
Right. I would have been okay if you get Kimbrel and not even think about Scherzer and Turner. I would have preferred Kimbrel, but I'm not Andrew Friedman. I don't know what I'm talking about. So, so how this impacts this division, I think the Dodgers win it. Scherzer's going to make his debut on Wednesday night, and I'm not sure when Trey Turner is going to play. Of course, he got COVID, so it'll be here in the next week or two is when he'll have his debut. I think he'll play second base, and your lineup looks like this. You have Betts, you have Turner, you have
Muncy.
Justin Turner, you have Bellinger, Chris Taylor, Muncy, Seager, Will Smith. I mean, this lineup,
Nasty.
it's good. And then your rotation is Bueller, Scherzer, Kershaw,
Urias.
and
Gonsolin.
I guess Gonsolin. Gonsolin ain't even that good, but they need a fifth, so he's the guy. Maybe Danny Duffy.
Duffy when he gets back, but I think Duffy's still hurt a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So I think Duffy will be the fifth. Until they get Dustin May or whoever back. But I'm okay with what they did. I am not happy with it by means. Sure, I'm ecstatic that we have one of the best pitchers in baseball now and one of the better position players in baseball. I just wish they wouldn't have given up as much, but they did what they did, and I can sit here and complain about it all day, and it's not going to change it. So,
well, at the end of the day on Wednesday night, we'll both be glued to the TV watching Scherzer's Dodger debut. So,
right. So, the Giants got better, with Bryant. He hit a homer this afternoon, and he hit it way out of, almost out of AT&T Park, or Oracle Park, whatever they call it now. I think they've changed the name of that place like 6 times in the last 6 years. But
AT&T was so perfect too. Why'd they change it?
Yeah, I don't know, but I still think the Dodgers win this division. But if the Giants keep winning at the clip that they are, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the Giants have put themselves in such a good position. Let's talk about the Padres. It's going to be the last team that we talk about today. But the Padres went out and got Adam Frazier. They went out and got Daniel Hudson from the Nationals. I love that move. I wanted Daniel Hudson to be a Red. But I really like the move that they made there. They also went out and got, I think, did they get a starting pitcher? I feel like they got a starting pitcher too. I don't know why. I felt like they got a starting pitcher. But they got Hudson, they got Frazier. Frazier's going to be kind of like a super utility guy for them. They also got Jake Marisnick as some depth in the outfield. I think that was a sneaky good move as well. So I don't think the Padres had a bad deadline by any means. I will say that no, they did not trade for a starter. So it's just Frazier and Hudson that they got. So, but
and then they picked up Marisnick as well.
Yeah, Marisnick is depth, and then they got Frazier and Hudson. So no starters, but Frazier will be like a super utility guy for him. He'll probably play a lot of second base while Tatis is out. They might move Cronenworth to shortstop or something like that. I like what they did. I don't think they had a bad deadline by any means, but I think they really needed a depth starter, and they didn't get that. So with Tatis being hurt for a bit with that shoulder injury, and we don't know how guys like Ryan Weathers and Chris Paddock and guys like Lamet, who have injury histories in the past, are going to hold up over the course of a full season. So I think the Padres are definitely still a really good team that has a really good chance of making the playoffs. But I don't think they got better enough to the point where they're a lock to get into the playoffs. I think there's teams like the Reds or like the Braves or like the Mets, if they fall out of first place, that are still in the rearview mirror of the Padres, where the Padres, the Giants and Dodgers, I feel like are locks because they have very minimal holes. Same with the Brewers at this point. But the Padres, I still see a few holes with them, if that makes sense. And I think they're a better baseball team than the Reds. I'm not saying that the Reds are better than the Padres. I don't want that to be what it sounds like. But I think the Padres have enough holes where when something like this happens, where Tatis is hurt for a few weeks or a couple starters start to regress and they start losing games. I think the Padres are like 4-6 in their last 10. They just lost 2 out of 4 to the Rockies at home, which is a bad series split. I think the Reds are good enough where they could take advantage of that. And the Reds have already closed the wild card gap down to 4 games. If Tatis is out for multiple weeks, by the time he gets back, the Reds could be right there. And that's all I'm saying. I think the Padres are the better baseball team, but I don't think the Padres got good enough at the deadline to pull away from teams like the Reds and the Braves.
No, I don't think so either. You have so many talented teams in this league. And right now, the Dodgers are holding down the top wild card spot. Padres are the second team, but the Reds are just 4 games back. And then you have the Cardinals at 6.5, Phillies at 7.5 back, and then you have Braves, Cubs. Cubs aren't making the playoffs. Braves, maybe. Phillies won't make the playoffs. So really, it's the Reds.
I think the Reds are the biggest competition to the Padres for that second wild card spot. And I'd say the next team after that is probably Atlanta. And I know that's crazy to think because they don't have Acuna, they don't have Ozuna, they don't have Soroka. But I really like the additions of Soler and Duvall, and I think it keeps them close.
Yeah, and and to all the teams we just talked about, the only team with a positive run differential out of the Cards, Phillies, and Braves is the Braves.
Mm-hmm.
So and so they have the talent to kind of come up, go on a bit of a run and fight for that, fight with the Reds for that second wild card spot. The Reds and the Padres. So you have teams here that are gonna be fighting to the end.
No doubt about it.
And it's a possible scenario where it'll go down to the last day. And there's a situation that played out a few years back where we needed an extra game to decide a division. So that might be a possibility here. So this was fun. This trade deadline was fun. And one more thing I want to touch on before we move on is quite possibly one of the bigger stories of the entire deadline is that we didn't see Trevor Story move anywhere.
Crazy. Story never got traded. The Rockies seem to think they will get more value out of getting a first-round draft pick for him when he leaves in free agency than any of the prospects they would have gotten for him, which, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. It's such a risk to take a chance on some 17-year. It's crazy to think that the Rockies had one of the best shortstops in baseball for 6 years, and all they're going to get for him is one 17-year-old kid where you don't know how the heck he's going to do.
Yeah. Personally, I would have traded him. You're better off getting what you're going to get out of guys, prospects that are somewhat proven.
You get like one top 100 guy and a couple mid prospects, at least kind of like their scouting report and what they bring to the table. Where you just take a kid out of high school in the first round, he looks good in hii school, but you don't know how that's going to translate to single A or high A or double A or whatever. I mean, we see high school kids all the time that have 1.4 ERAs in high school or first round picks, and then they never have an ERA below 5 in the minors.
Right, and so this is going to be, interesting to say the least. What are the Rockies thinking here? Because the Rockies aren't, they're not a great team by any means, but they're not completely terrible like I thought they'd be. No. Granted, they have the worst record away from their stadium in baseball. It's just 13 wins away from Coors Field. But I don't know, man. Yeah, I don't know how you don't trade Trevor Story. So,
I don't know either.
Yeah.
Really quick before we get into the NFL segment, which we're going to in just 2 minutes, but I thought it'd be fun. AL and NL after the deadline. Let's rank the teams that are contenders based on how we think how good they are after the deadline. So we'll start with the AL. I think the White Sox are the team to beat in the AL now. They added Kimbrel, they added Cesar Hernandez. So I'm going to go White Sox 1, Astros 2. I'm going to say Rays 3, Red Sox 4, Yankees 5, A's 6. That's my top 6 that I'm going to rank.
I have White Sox 1. I'm going to take the Rays for 2.
Okay.
Astros 3. Red Sox 4. Yankees 5.
Okay. And then would that mean A's 6? Did you say A's? I'm sorry.
Completely forgot about the A's.
I did Yankees 5 and A's 6. That's why I was curious.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it. I think the Yankees are about to get red hot.
Yeah, I do too.
I watched them this weekend. They look like a team that's about to get really good.
Okay, I'm gonna change mine. So still White Sox 1.
Okay.
I'm gonna take Astros 2,
Okay.
Red Sox 3,
Okay.
and
I mean, it's smart to not bet against Chris Sale. Sale could come back and be the top 5 pitcher in baseball that he's always been.
we're gonna do Astros 4, Rays 5, Yankees 6.
Okay.
I think I got everybody. I might have messed that up. It's late. I don't know. Who cares?
And then the National League, I'm gonna do Dodgers 1, Giants 2, Brewers 3, Mets 4, Padres 5, Reds 6. But 4 through 6, Mets, Padres, and Reds, really close.
Yeah, I have Dodgers 1, Giants 2. Brewers 3. Reds 4.
Oh, I like that.
Padres 5. Mets 6.
I'm not impressed with the NL East, man. I gave the Mets a lot of credit the first 3 months of the season. I thought they were a good team, but I've just watched them play the Reds 6 times over the last 2 weeks. That's a very vulnerable and beatable team. And that looks like the team to beat in the East.
Yeah, I am not high on the Mets at all. I just, sure they got Baez, but I just don't see them being that great. Because
I can sum up the Mets really fast. Any day that DeGrom takes the mound, they're going to win. Any day that anyone else takes the mound, they're very beatable.
Yes, that's very, very valid.
Yeah. I think that's what I've learned about watching the Mets this year. If it's a Jacob deGrom day, they're going to win. If it's not a Jacob deGrom day, who knows?
Yeah. So, and even on sometimes on deGrom days, they don't win
because they can't score.
Yeah, right. They can't give deGrom runs.
2 runs. Yeah.
So, how hard is it to score 2 runs?
Right. All he needs is 2 runs.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, I could never go out and hit an MLB pitch. No way, not happening in any lifetime. But
here's a question: you stand in a batting cage. Jacob deGrom throws you 500 fastballs at 102 miles an hour. How many are you making contact with?
Like 5.
Okay.
If that.
Are any of them in play, or are they all like foul balls?
They're all foul.
Okay.
And I would probably either
retire after the first one.
Yeah, I would see 102 miles an hour, and then I immediately just drop the bat.
Nope.
Bow to DeGrom and leave.
And I mean, that's just assuming he throws straight fastballs. What if he starts throwing like sliders and changeups? Then you really wouldn't make contact.
No shot.
DeGrom would just be toying with me, and he'd probably hit me in the back foot with a slider, and I'd still swing at it.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get into this NFL tier list, Parker. That was a lot of fun talking about. I'm baseball's my favorite sport, so I'm going to be glued to my TV over the next 2 months because it looks like every single division, with maybe the exception of the AL Central and the NL East, is going to be an absolute dogfight to the end. So I'm excited for it.
I am too. All these divisions were fun. The AL East, I'm going to be really watching.
We're a little short for time on this tier list, so we're going to start with some of the elite backs, Parker, to make sure that we get all the really good ones. So let's start with who I would say is the best all-around running back in football. I'm not saying best back in football, period, because I think that's up for debate, but the best all-around running back in football, Christian McCaffrey, S tier, no doubt about it. One of the best receivers in the NFL, one of the best change of direction backs in the NFL. Great at making people miss. He's got top-tier speed, and he's got subtle, underrated strength, too. He can run over some guys, too. Christian McCaffrey can literally do anything.
Yes, he can. I feel like he could go out and play defensive back if he needed to. Christian McCaffrey's fantastic. He's one of the, like you said, one of the better backs in football. I think he's, him and Derrick Henry are neck and neck for best back in the league.
Mhm.
They're very different players.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry's the bigger run you over bruiser type back, and McCaffrey's the smaller, shifty, quick, smaller back. So
Yeah.
um, they're very different players, but I think McCaffrey is one of the better. I think he is up there with the best receiving backs in the NFL. So he's S tier for me also.
Let's keep it in S tier and let's move on to Derrick Henry, who is, like you said, I think it comes down. I think it's a 3-person race for best running back in the NFL. I think you have Derrick. My vote would be for Derrick Henry. Not far behind at all is Christian McCaffrey, and then somebody else who I wouldn't pick as my best running back in the NFL, but I wouldn't think you're a complete idiot if you said this, is Dalvin Cook. Those are my top 3.
Yeah, I'm with you. All 3 of those guys are really good. I think, I'm with you on the fact that I think Derrick Henry is the best the best back in football, because he literally runs my Colts over every twice a year.
Derrick Henry is one of very few running backs in the NFL that can just win a game by himself.
And he does
multiple times.
He does. I was at a Colts game where Derrick Henry won the game for them, and it was bad. But yeah, so I think Derrick Henry personally is the best back in football. Like you said, not far as McCaffrey, and then all 3 of those guys are close, but I think Derrick Henry best back in football personally.
So let's just get all 3 of these guys out of the way. Henry, Cook, and McCaffrey all belong in S tier. I think, we already kind of touched on this. I think they're all very different backs. I think Henry is the big run you over truck, big bruiser, bowling ball kind of guy. McCaffrey's the receiving back, and Dalvin Cook's kind of your traditional straight all around rusher, but they're all great. And they're all S tier without a doubt.
Yeah, they are. Both, all 3 of these guys are fantastic. I personally tend to like Dalvin Cook a little bit more because he's more balanced. He can do really both. But I still think Derrick Henry, best back there is.
I got 2 more guys on this list that I'm going to throw in S tier, Parker, and we're going to start with the guy who just got a brand new payday, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is unbelievably fun to watch, and I hate saying that because he's on the Browns, but he is a dude. Bill Belichick doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, Parker, but let's be real. The Patriots took the wrong running back out of Georgia in that draft because Nick Chubb's an absolute baller. This is a guy that can run over you. He's got big play potential every time he touches the ball. He never fumbles, and he's just a guy that he's a quiet dude. He puts his head down, does his job, and gets out. Great teammate, great leader, and the Browns got themselves a really good running back.
Yeah, they did. I'm not going to have him as high as S tier. I'm going to put him in A tier.
Okay.
I still think Nick Chubb's a fantastic back, and he deserved all every cent that he got in that deal that they signed this weekend. But Nick Chubb's great. I think they the Browns and and I think the Colts have is 2 of the best running back rooms all around in football. With the Browns, you have Hunt, Chubb, in that room, and then of course in Indy you have Mack, Taylor, and Hines. So I'm a big Nick Chubb guy. And the Browns I think are fun to watch, and I have them as my AFC North winners this year.
Yeah, me too. I think the Browns are the team to beat for sure. The final running back I'm going to put in my S tier. I very went back and forth on this. I almost put him in A tier, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in S tier because I think he wins games for his team, and that's going to be Alvin Kamara. If you put him in A tier, I wouldn't be upset. I almost did the same. But like I said, I think all 5 guys I have in S tier can win games single-handedly for their football teams. That's a common theme I kind of came to for this tier. So that's what kind of made that decision for me for Kamara. I have seen him win games by himself for the Saints.
I'm with you on this one. I'm a big Alvin Kamara fan, and I think he belongs in S tier as well. And he, like I said, he's going to, or like we talked about, he's going to have a bigger role than any year of his career this season. With the questions at quarterback with the Saints, Kamara's role is going to be increased, and I think he's going to take advantage of that. He's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised to see him win the rushing title this year. I really would.
I wouldn't either, to be real with you. I'm gonna get A tier started with a guy that I like a lot. He was one of the best running backs in the league a few years ago. I still think he's up there. But Ezekiel Elliott, I have him in A tier. He's not an S tier running back for me anymore. And I know he had a down year last year, but I still think he's a really talented back. He came into camp in really good shape. He looks really good in camp so far. And I think he's poised for a big bounce back year. So I still think Ezekiel Elliott's a top 10 running back in the NFL without a doubt.
He is, and I think he's up there as I think he'd be my 8, 9, or 10 in that list. But he still certainly is talented. He had a rough year last year, no doubt about it. But he has all the talent in the world. He's a bruiser of a back, and he's very quick. So Elliott's an A tier back for me as well.
And this next guy has been hurt a lot, and I know that it's hard to kind of evaluate him based on what he's done lately because he hasn't been on the field lately. But based on his talent, he belongs in this tier. Saquon Barkley, I still think he's got the potential to be an S tier if he can stay on the field. I love Saquon Barkley's game, but as of right now, he's still A tier for me because just he hasn't been consistent in being on the football field. But if this guy gets a couple full seasons under his belt, no doubt in my mind, I think he's a top 5 back in the league.
I do too. And he, like you said, he's had, some injury issues, but when he has been on the field, he's really good. He wasn't the number 2 pick in the draft for no reason. I mean, he's a fantastic player, of course. So, just another Penn State James Franklin alum who is really good. So, Barkley A tier for me also.
All right. Well, we're getting a little bit further into A tier. The next guy I'm going to put on here before we really kind of get fun on this, I have a couple guys that I want to throw in A tier that I don't know if you're going to put them in A tier, but I think you're going to at least see where I'm coming from. But this next guy I think you'll have here too. I'm going to go with Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. I know he doesn't get as much love as I think he should because, it's the Aaron Rodgers air raid offense in Green Bay, but this is a hard-nosed runner of the football. He's also really good out of the backfield catching the football. He's a do-it-all back, and he's a big weapon in that Green Bay offense that doesn't have the best receivers in the NFL by any means. So Aaron Jones is A tier for me.
I agree. I like Aaron Jones a lot, and like you said, it's hard to kind of judge him because he's playing with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers just throws the ball all over the field. But when he does touch the ball, he does great things with it. I'm going to have him A tier also.
This next guy, I could see you having him in B, but I'm going to have him in A because I love his game. He's still really young, but he's really, really good. Josh Jacobs with the Vegas Raiders. I almost said the LA Raiders. The Vegas Raiders. Bruiser, runs over guys. He's done it since he was in Alabama in college, but he's really fast. He's great out of the backfield, too, as a receiving back. Doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Smart kid, still really young. And he's one of the best players on the football field whenever the Raiders are on the field. So I love this cat. He's just getting better and better every single year, and he's earned the right to be an A tier for me.
I'm going to put him in B. I haven't seen enough from him. Of course, he was great at Alabama, and he showed flashes of being good in the NFL. I just want to see more from him. So it's going to be B.
That's fair. I have, I think, just one more back that I'm going to put in A tier. I debated putting Antonio Gibson in A tier because I like him a lot, but I'm going to put him, I think, in B tier because I'm not going to overhype his rookie season, even though it was a really good rookie season, and I think he has the potential to be an A tier after the year. But the final guy I'm going to put in A tier for my list, at least, is Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know that he had an up and down season a year ago. I don't think that's all his fault. He had a couple injury bugs. He had a quick little knee procedure that left him out a couple games, and he had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. The offensive line still is probably not going to be great this year, but it's going to be better. But a lot of people, I think, forget that Joe Mixon led the AFC in rushing 2 years ago. I think this guy has the potential to be a borderline top 5 running back in the league. I don't know if he'll ever get to top 5, but I think he's borderline. And I think when he's healthy, when he's on the field, and when he's on top of his game, he's without a doubt a top 10 running back in the league. So I know I'm a Bengals fan. A lot of people probably thinks that sounds biased, but I love Joe Mixon as a football player, and that would be if I was a Bengals fan or not.
Yeah, and I think Mixon is a great back as well. I'm going to have him in A tier also. He's had a couple down. He's had some down years where he's been injured or just hasn't performed well. But I think Mixon is fantastic. And he. I think he's awesome. Of course, the one game that I don't start him in my fantasy team, he runs for 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, the game against the Jags.
Yeah, so that very much bothered me. But I think he's a great player for sure, and he's going to be A tier for me also.
All right, we're starting off B tier now. The first 3 backs that come to my mind, I'm going to go a little bit of a speed round here because we only have about 15, 20 minutes left of the show. So I'm going to do 3 at once. I'm going to go Chris Carson, Antonio Gibson, and Jonathan Taylor are going to be my first 3 that I put in B tier. Carson, very solid back. I don't think he's spectacular, which is why I have him here. A little bit of issues fumbling the football, but when he's on the field, he's solid. He's a good starting running back, not an elite starting running back. And then Gibson and Taylor both had dynamite rookie seasons, and I think they're future A tier, maybe even S tier backs. But as of right now, I'm going to have them in B because I need to see a little bit more. So that's my thought process for these 3.
Yeah, so for Carson, I am kind of meh on.
Okay.
I just haven't, maybe that's because I haven't just followed Seahawk football religiously, but he's a great back, and I'll give him credit. He's a B tier back for me also. I just need to see a little bit more from him. I think he has a really high ceiling. I just need to see more from him. As far as Gibson goes, I haven't seen a whole lot from him, but from
he was
what
on
I
my
have
fantasy
seen,
team. I can vouch for him. He's a stud.
yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot from him, but from what I have seen, he's been great. He had a great year last year, as did Taylor. Taylor blew my expectations out of the water.
Yeah, Taylor's just such a strong back.
And I wasn't sure how he was going to fit into the offense with Matt getting the starting reps. But, with Matt going down week 1, he came in and, tore the lights off, almost everybody. He ran for 250 yards in the last game of the year. And I was, so happy that he did because I won my fantasy championship because of the guy.
Yeah.
But I'm looking for another big year from Taylor. This 3-headed monster that Frank Reich is going to run is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
So Taylor's a B tier back for me as well.
What I love about Gibson, man, is how consistent he was. I mean, like I said, he was one of my top running backs all season long in fantasy, and he just every single week, 80 yards and a touchdown. So consistent. And then, I mean, he even had weeks where he'd have 40, 50 yards out of the backfield as a receiving back. So this dude is just a stats sheet stuffer. And he's without a doubt going to be a keeper in my fantasy football league. We have a keeper league where we get to keep one player from a year ago. And I'm going back and forth on Antonio Gibson and DK Metcalf. And it's going to be really hard for me because both of them are going to be absolute studs this year. And I'm probably going to go Metcalf at the end of the day because I think Metcalf's going to be a top 5 receiver in the league this year, at least in fantasy. But I love Antonio Gibson a lot. If I can get him on my fantasy football team again this year, he will be there because he's a stud. But we have less than 2 weeks of this show left, Parker. I know we talked about this earlier in the summer, but I want to kind of do it next week on one of our last shows. Let's do a mock fantasy football draft.
I'm okay with that. Let's do it.
We can invite some of the listeners of the show to take part in it.
I'm all right with that. Let's do it.
There you go. All right. Well, a couple more B tier backs I have on this list. I'm going to do 3 more here, and I'm going to go with 3 guys that I think are good, not great. That's going to be kind of the theme here. So I'm going to go with 3 guys. I'm going to go David Montgomery, who had a really good year a year ago, but he's been too inconsistent for me to put him higher than B. I'm going to go with Austin Eckler. He's solid when he's on the field, but he's had injury issues, and he's been a third down back for most of his career. And the final back I'm going to go with here is going to be Miles Sanders with the Philadelphia Eagles, who very similarly Montgomery inconsistent until last season and then had a great year a year ago. So both of these guys are trending up, but I need to see a little bit more. And then Eckler, I think Eckler is kind of like Chris Carson, where he's just kind of been a career B tier back.
Yeah, I'm with you on Montgomery. He's been better, but I just need to see more consistency from him. Eckler's been, a solid back. When Melvin Gordon went down a few years back in San Diego or Los Angeles, wherever they were, Eckler came in and played really well in that offense, and he's continued to play well. So Sanders, I'm a little bit lower on. I'm going to put him in C tier. I don't think he's as great as most people say. He's had some issues with fumbling, but that can be worked out. This year is really big for a lot of these guys, but I think none bigger than Miles Sanders.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to. Actually, I'm gonna put one more guy in B tier. No, I'm gonna put two more guys in B tier that I have here. I'm gonna put Mike Davis in B tier. I think he did really well in the absence of Christian McCaffrey, and I forget where he's at now. Is it Atlanta that he went? Yes, Atlanta. So he's going to be the starting running back in Atlanta this year. I think he'll be solid, not spectacular, but he did earn his way onto my radar last year. I think he did a good job with McCaffrey hurt. So I'll put him in B. And then the last guy I have in B on my list is Rojo with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Very young guy, a little inconsistent for me to put higher than B, but he has some of the best big play potential in the NFL, and he's still really young, and I think he can get a lot better.
Personally, I think Mike Davis is a C tier back for me.
That's fair.
He's just not very consistent. I'm going to put Rojo in B tier as well. I have one more B tier guy for you.
Okay.
Cam Akers in Los Angeles.
I was going to put Cam Akers at the top of C, but I can totally respect putting him in B.
I love the way Cam Akers plays. He's a smaller, shifty back who's very fast, and I'm a big Cam Akers fan, so he's another B tier back for me.
Okay, I respect that, no doubt about it. I'm going to start off my C tier with three young running backs that I think have a lot of potential, but I'm going to put in C tier because I need to see more. It's going to be Akers, who I have at the top of C. He's more like C+. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who got off to an outstanding start, but then kind of faded, so I need to see more from him. And then J.K. Dobbins, which I'm an Ohio State fan. I love J.K. Dobbins, and I think he has a lot of potential. But he spent a lot of last year as a backup, and I need to see more of him as a starter before I can commit to him as an above-average NFL running back.
Yeah, and I'm with you on Helaire. He started off really well, in Kansas City, and he played well with in that offense with Andy Reid and with Mahomes. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Helaire does next year, and as well as Dobbins. It's hard, playing in a place like Baltimore, as a running back with that offense, but they seem to make it work there. Harbaugh's kind of figured out a system to implement the running backs well, and Dobbins is a bigger back, as all the Ohio State fans know. Yeah. He's certainly a talented player, and he's a C tier back for me also.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my D tier started just to kind of clear off or make this list full. I'm going to go with three guys that I don't think should be starting running backs in the NFL at this point in time. And that's Chase Edmonds, who I think is a great third down back, but he should not be a starting back. Damian Harris, I think the Patriots could really use an upgrade at running back. And then a guy that I just don't think I've never really been that high on, and I don't think he's a starting back at this point in his career anymore, Phillip Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm with you on all three of these guys. I think Lindsey has the most potential to be a starter in this back than any three of those guys. Mm-hmm. But he hasn't been as consistent as I'd like him to be. And another guy I think on this list that I think is going to be D tier for me, is Tevin Coleman.
Yeah.
I think he's a great, a great Robin. But I don't think he is a starter caliber back.
Right. I agree with you there. I think we're on the same page on that. So let's move back to C tier. I'm going to go with Najee Harris in C tier. I think Najee Harris has the potential to be an A tier back, but he's a rookie, and I can't rate him anywhere else because I haven't seen him take a snap yet. Another guy I'm going to put in C tier is DeAndre Swift. I think Swift looks like a great third down back in the NFL, but he's been hurt numerous times and he's been inconsistent a lot. And for a guy that was a big deal out of the draft as a late first round pick, it's a little underwhelming that he looks like he's only a solid third down back.
Yeah, yeah, and one more guy I'm going to put in C tier is Mostert.
I'm with you.
I think Mostert, he's certainly a talented back, and he's had flashes of being, a C plus B tier player, but he's just not very consistent. So I think Mostert's a C tier back, and another C tier back for me is James Robinson. I like the way I like the start that Robinson had last year, and I think he's a talented player. He's going to have a great year this year, I think.
I agree. I think Robinson's definitely trending up. I'd even move him up with Akers at the top of C tier for me.
Yeah.
I think I'm with you on Mostert. I think he's very similar to Coleman in that he's more of a Robin than a Batman. The reason why I have him in C instead of Coleman with Coleman in D is because, one, I think Mostert has much more big play potential than Tevin Coleman does. Mostert has like 670+ yard touchdowns in the past 2.5 years. He's insane about making big plays. I have Mostert on my fantasy team every year too because he gets 70-yard touchdowns every other week. But I hate it because I really like watching him play, but I have to put him in C tier because he just gets hurt every single year. I don't think he has the durability to be a starting running back.
No, I don't think so either. I like the way he plays. I do, but I just need to see more consistency and more durability from him. So another guy that I think I like a lot. He isn't as good as he was, but I think he certainly has C tier level talent as Melvin Gordon.
I agree.
And I think he plays well. It just sucks that he's on a below average team.
Yeah,
because I think in the right spot, Melvin Gordon could be really good.
And
I think that was with the Chargers, but that went south, and of course he's with the Broncos now. But I'm a big Melvin Gordon fan.
Yeah, I think Melvin Gordon's definitely a guy with big play potential. He's very shifty. He's a good receiving back as well. I'd put him in C tier as well. He has what feels like low A, high B potential, but he sometimes plays like he's in low C, high D. So it's kind of a balance that you find. These last two guys, Myles Gaskin, I need to know more about, but I don't think he's the long-term solution for the Dolphins. I know he's had moments where he's looked like a solid back, but he wasn't even a starting running back in college until his senior season. So I just don't know how. I'm just trying to put myself in a Dolphins fan's shoes. And if I was told that Myles Gaskin is my team's starting running back, I wouldn't be that excited about it. And that's maybe not fair to him because I haven't seen him play more than a handful of games. But, I sit here as a Bengals fan and I hear Joe Mixon, and I'm like, absolutely. Joe Mixon's a baller. I hear the name Myles Gaskin. I'm like, okay, what? I hear and just to put myself in another team's position, I hear Jonathan Taylor. I think stud, future star in the NFL. I feel like there's star, you name off a team starting running back and you get kind of a first impression where you think Christian McCaffrey, one of the best in the business, Joe Mixon, baller, Jonathan Taylor, up and coming superstar, Myles Gaskin, meh, I don't know. So I'm going to put him in D. Maybe he deserves to be in C, but I'm going to put him in D just because I don't think he's the long-term answer there. And I don't know if I can put him ahead of guys like Chase Edmonds and Phillip Lindsay, who I have seen more of. And Zach Moss is going to be at the top of D tier for me. He looks like he's going to get the majority of snaps for Buffalo because Singletary's kind of been more of a third down back. I like the way he plays football. I liked him at Utah. I liked him in a brief sample size in Buffalo last year. But I can't put him in good conscience over any of the guys in C tier because he played 5 games. So I like the potential that Zach Moss has this year, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on him. But in good faith, I can't put him over guys like Edwards-Helaire and Robinson and Dobbins and Najee Harris and all those guys. So he's going to be the best running back in D tier for me.
Yeah, Moss is interesting to me because I haven't seen him play. Um, so I need to see a little bit more from him. So he's a D tier back for me. Gaskin's interesting. I don't know what to make of him. He, like you said, he only started 1 year in college. It was his senior season, and I don't, if, like you said, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm not jumping out of my seat for Miles Gaskin. I'm not. Okay. Um,
Okay, yeah, right.
guess that's all right. But yeah, so the Dolphins running back situation is interesting. They had Breida, which I think he was good, and they had Gore a couple of years ago. But the Dolphins are interesting. I think they're going to be good depending on their quarterbacks. But all these guys, in D tier certainly are. They're not bad players by any means, but they're just not consistent, or they don't play it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, just like that, it's 3:00 and we've hit our 2-hour time block. But today's show was an absolute blast. I mean, talking about some of the top wide receiver rooms in college football was very fun to start the show. And that feels like it was, a long time ago. The MLB trade deadline talk, like I said, baseball is my favorite sport. So I'll never complain about talking about baseball. And the trade deadline this year was an absolute blast. And then, I mean, there's so many good running backs in the NFL that I feel like, half of the guys that we put in B tier and even some of the guys that we put in C tier, I wouldn't be upset to have as a starting running back on my favorite team.
No, I wouldn't either. And there's lots of talented backs in this league, and they should be higher. If guys like McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, among others, the top guys weren't in this league, they'd be higher on these lists. But just the abundance of talent in the NFL at running back is really, it's awesome.
It is. Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us here today on WWSU 106.9 FM and our YouTube channel. However you hung out with us, we do appreciate it. Summer's coming to an end, but we still have plenty of fun to get into over the next 9 shows to end the summer. So appreciate you hanging out with us. Parker, any closing thoughts on this Monday?
Well, it was, we have, the trade deadline was a blast last week. And I can't wait to dive into, what we see from guys like Scherzer, Trey Turner, and some other guys that have yet to make their debuts. So it's going to be a fun farewell 2 weeks here on Keep It Real.
Absolutely. And we got 2 big conference previews to get into in the Power 5 with the SEC and the Big Ten. We're basically just going to flip a coin and decide which one we do this week and which one we do next week because they're both going to be absolutely awesome. But I'm excited for it. We're going to do, a fantasy football mock draft at some point. We're going to do probably more tier lists at some point. I'm probably going to react to the Reds getting swept by the Pirates and blowing their chances at the playoffs. So there's a lot of fun to come, but we appreciate you hanging out with us. So for Parker back in Noblesville, until tomorrow, I'm Shea Neal saying so long and keep it real. We'll talk to you tomorrow.